Today, we're diving into J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, but we're not just going to rehash the plot. We're going to unpack it as a timeless parable. A story with a really deep moral lesson about what it actually means to be a hero.
So let's start with the question that's really at the core of this whole book. Can someone who is totally, completely average do something amazing? We're not talking about a superpowered warrior or some wise old wizard. We're talking about someone just like us. And The Hobbit? Well, it's Tolkien's fantastic answer to that very question.
And just look at this. It really captures the entire transformation, doesn't it? On one side, you have Bilbo Baggins of Bag End, a hobbit whose biggest concerns are what's for dinner and where his comfy armchair is. But on the other side, you've got a clever, resourceful leader who has faced down goblins and stared down dragons. So how on earth does that happen? How does a creature of pure comfort become a hero?
Well, it all starts when the big, wide world literally comes knocking at his door. In this first part of the story, we get to see Bilbo's quiet, predictable, and, let's be honest, kind of boring life get turned completely upside down by a call to adventure he absolutely did not ask for.
Let's be crystal clear about who Bilbo is when we first meet him. His entire world is the Shire, a place full of peaceful routines and simple pleasures. Adventure? That's not just something he dislikes, it's something he thinks is just plain awful. It's nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable work, as he himself puts it. By every possible measure, he's the most unlikely hero you could ever imagine. And then boom, the call to adventure arrives. Gandalf and a whole company of 13 dwarves basically just invade his quiet little hobbit hole. And they're not just there for tea, they're recruiting him for an incredibly dangerous quest. They don't need a fighter, they need a burglar to sneak around and help them get their treasure back from a dragon. So, against all his instincts, Bilbo is suddenly thrust out into the world.
Okay, so as soon as he's on the road, Bilbo is tested immediately. This part of his journey is what storytellers call the Road of Trials. And it's exactly what it sounds like, a series of challenges designed to strip away his old, comfortable self and reveal the hero hiding underneath.
And boy, do those trials come one after another. First, they run into a group of hungry trolls who are seriously considering them for dinner. Then, they get captured by a whole army of malicious goblins deep inside the mountains. And as if that wasn't enough, they get tangled up by giant spiders in the terrifying forest of Mirkwood. And you know what? In every single one of these situations, the dwarves, the so-called seasoned warriors, are completely helpless.
Now deep under those mountains, all alone, and absolutely terrified, Bilbo has what might be the most important encounter of his life. He meets the creature Gollum, and his survival comes down to winning a simple game of riddles. This isn't a fight of swords and shields, it's a battle of pure wit.
And it's down there, in the dark, that he finds one thing. Just one. A mysterious, magical ring. This little gold ring gives him the power to become invisible. And that ability becomes absolutely essential. Not just for his own survival, but for saving his friends over and over again. It's the tool that finally lets his inner cleverness come out and shine.
The really crucial thing to get here is that Bilbo is always afraid. He is terrified through pretty much this entire journey, but he acts anyway. He faces down those spiders, he outsmarts Gollum, he even confronts a dragon. His journey shows us that courage isn't about not being scared, it's about making the choice to do something even when you're scared.
So, with the physical journey pretty much done, the story completely changes gears. Suddenly, the biggest challenge isn't a monster with teeth and claws, it's a sickness of the heart. And this is really the central moral test of the whole parable.
So the dragon, Smaug, is finally defeated. You'd think it's time to celebrate, right? Well, wrong. Instead of a party, a brand new conflict just erupts. That huge pile of treasure, now that it's unguarded, starts to poison the minds of everyone who wants it. The leader of the dwarves, Thorin Oakenshield, gets a bad case of what the book calls dragon sickness, which is basically just an all-consuming paranoid greed.
And the conflict is pretty straightforward. You've got the dwarves, led by a now corrupted Thorin, who want to hoard every single coin. You have the men of Laketown, who desperately need a share to rebuild their homes that the dragon destroyed. Then the elves show up, wanting their piece of the pie. Everyone is gearing up for a massive war over gold. And what about Bilbo? What does he want? He just wants peace.
So, Bilbo does something truly extraordinary. He takes the Arkenstone, the heart of the mountain, the most precious gem in the entire hoard, and he secretly sneaks it out of the mountain and gives it to the men and elves.
His goal isn't to steal it, it's to create a bargaining chip, to force everyone to the negotiating table and stop a pointless, bloody war.
And right here, this is the moment. This is when Bilbo's transformation is finally complete. It's an act of incredible bravery, not with a sword, but with his conscience. While all these mighty warriors are being blinded by their greed, our little hobbit is the only one who can see with perfect moral clarity. He risks his life and his friendship with the dwarfs, all to do what he knows is right.
So where does all of this lead? Well, this final part of the story reveals what the true reward of Bilbo's journey actually was. And spoiler alert, it turns out to be something way more valuable than gold or jewels. But of course, Bilbo's plan for peace is shattered when a common enemy shows up, a massive army of goblins and wargs. So all these groups that were about to fight each other are suddenly forced to unite. They end up winning the Battle of Five Armies, but it comes at a terrible price. Thorin is mortally wounded, and in his last moments, he finally makes peace with Bilbo, at last understanding the Hobbit's quiet wisdom.
In the end, Bilbo takes almost no treasure home with him. Instead, he returns with stories, a much bigger perspective on life, and a deep understanding of the world beyond his own little garden. He's no longer just a hobbit from the Shire, he's a citizen of the wider world, forever changed by his adventure and by the friends he lost along the way.
So what is this parable really celebrating? It's not power, and it's definitely not wealth. It champions mercy, which we see when Bilbo chooses to spare Gollum's life. It celebrates humility, the simple virtue of being small and unassuming. And it argues that real heroism is found in cleverness and kindness, not just in how strong your sword arm is.
And all of that leaves us with one final big question to think about. The Hobbit uses a literal mountain of gold to teach us the difference between two things, treasure and wealth. Thorin had all the treasure in the world, and it ultimately cost him everything. Bilbo, on the other hand, came home with wisdom, experience, and character. And that, Tolkien seems to be telling us, is the only true wealth that really matters.